Got it.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. I love it. All right, everyone. We are going to get started in just a moment. We're letting everybody into the room. I see that we've got all our microphones turned off. This is excellent. So Carl, when you're ready for me to start introducing everyone.
Anytime. I've started recording, and John's co-host, so he can between the two of us, we can let in any latecomers.
Excellent.
And we're ready to go.
Excellent. All right. Hi, Roseborough Explorers. My name is Amanda Vallone, and I am one of the owners of Roseborough Travel. Tiffany, my business partner's here. She's maintaining her distance, but we are here in the office right now hosting this lovely Zoom webinar with you. Thank you all so much for joining today. We are with an amazing company. It's called Silversea, and I've got John Wilson and Carl. Carl, what's your last name? How do you say it?
Canstetter.
Canstetter. Thank you so much.
No one can pronounce it. I always butcher it, even though I really know how to say it.
Stuttered over that. So I've got Carl and John with Silversea on the call with me today, and they're going to bring you through the experience on board Silversea, as well as the destinations that you can visit with them, including the Arctic, Galapagos Islands, and Antarctica. Today I wore my trusty Silversea jacket, and when we get to Galapagos, I'll be happy to chime in, or maybe at the end, and tell you a little bit more about my personal experience with Silversea and Galapagos. But until then, I think that we will have John and Carl take it away. So thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, John and Carl, for getting on today.
Thank you for having us, Amanda. And today is actually going to be all about Silversea Expeditions versus Silversea Classic, because that will be for another day. But again, it's Silversea Expedition Day, and Carl is our expedition expert. I've had the great pleasure of being on 2 expedition cruises myself. I've done Galapagos and the Arctic, fantastic cruises. But I'm going to turn it over to Carl now for him to take it away.
Thank you, John. And if I've done this correctly, everyone should be able to see my screen. And a beautiful image taken from a drone of some sea kayaks in Antarctica. Can you guys see that? Amanda, can you see that?
Yep.
Good. Sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front. Huh. Why is it telling me that? Sorry.
Don't we love
It's just
technology is great when it works, but when there's a hiccup, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's funny. It's telling me that the sharing window has been paused, even though I just want to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. It's funny, you do this many times. If
not, we do an amazing stick figure show, people. So remember that.
All right.
I'm seeing
Still
your
saying it's
kayaks,
been
and I'm super excited and jealous at the same time.
Well, the next slide is a video, so let's see if this works.
Do.
Is it working?
Nope. Okay. Go to the next video call. Go to the next picture. Just can you click? Oh, no.
Have you got the map?
Nope.
Okay, it's very odd because it's saying sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front, which I haven't changed that. Bear with me 1 second.
I was talking to Amanda before. The last consumer event I actually did that was live in person was actually with Amanda and Roseborough Travel, right basically the week that COVID basically blew up, you know.
Shut us down.
Yeah. But it was the actually last in-person event I did. And, you know, I see some of the names here, and I believe some of you were at that event. And boy, I can only tell you this. I wish we were back at that country club doing that live one now versus any day of the week.
I'm sorry, everybody. This is very, very strange. It allows me to share my screen. And then as soon as this is up and you can see this image, it tells me that sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front. And I have no idea what that means or how to do it. I've never had this happen before.
Aren't we all special? See that? Too bad you can't pick the winning lottery ticket tonight.
Okay, now I think I've got it.
Bravo. Yay.
All right, same. Sorry about that.
It's when all your senses become aware. You are present in focus. That's traveling to me. It's an urgent need to go and observe this world that we all share. A ray of light, a pair of eyes that tell a story, an instant of perfection. Images printing on your soul. This is authentic beauty. It's all out there, and trust me, there's always room for discovery.
I think the thing I love most about that video is that there are no hero shots of a ship. And if you didn't know that you were at a presentation for a small ship luxury cruise line, you might think, what's that a video about? Because really what we did with the video is we focused on the destinations. And I think it's something that's really poignant right now because we haven't been able to travel the way we want to for the last 8 or 9 months. And it's also very important because it's one of the hallmarks of our brand. It's one of the hallmarks of Silversea. Because our vessels are so small, they range in guest capacity from 100 to 608 guests. And therefore, they're small ships and have a shallow draft. And as a result, we can get to all of these destinations. So last year, we sailed to over 900 different ports of call. It was very nearly 1,000. And this year in 2020, it was meant to be over 1,000. Everywhere you see a white dot is somewhere on the classic fleet. John referred to the classic fleet before. And what we mean by the classic fleet or classic destinations, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, Northern Europe, Scandinavia, Asia, that sort of thing. And all those red dots represent the expedition destinations. And those are places like the Russian Far East, Micronesia, Melanesia, Polynesia, both coasts of Africa, the northwest of Australia, up in Alaska, and the 3 that we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth today, the Arctic, Antarctica, and the Galapagos. So really anywhere water touches land. So what do I mean by expedition cruising? We throw this term around a lot and you've heard it now, but what does it mean? Well, it's not this. And these folks are not on expedition. And there's nothing wrong with those larger ships and ships with a lot of guests on them. Typically when people are starting out cruising, they're younger, they may have young families, they don't have as much time off, they may not have as much disposable income. And so something like that, the larger contemporary brands appeal to them. And then as they get a little bit older and they realize, well, I don't want to sail with quite as many people, I'd rather sail with a few hundred than with a few thousand. And something like this becomes a little bit more appealing. And then in working with Amanda, then she's going to try to suggest to you, what if you got on an even smaller ship? And what if we told you that it was a ship of 200 people? 100 in the Galapagos or 240 in Antarctica or 140 in the Arctic. That's where we're really starting to make a difference, getting on these small ships. And what we're doing then is using the small ship platform, this beautiful luxury ship, to get to destinations that are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get to on your own, and get off of the ship and go and explore. And in this case, we're exploring a little tributary in the Darien Gap in Central America using our Zodiacs, or we're exploring by sea kayak in Antarctica, or we're in a remote part of Iceland and getting off of the ship using the Zodiacs to go and explore this remote beach somewhere that would be very, very difficult, even if you were in Iceland. This is the Russian Far East. So across the Bering Sea from Alaska in the Chukotka Peninsula or Kamchatka, very much about volcanoes and grizzly bears. And one of the things that a lot of these places have in common is that you wouldn't find a cell signal if you had one, or you wouldn't have a cell signal, and you couldn't find a t-shirt shop if you wanted one, because we're really, really remote. Again, these are destinations that are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get to on your own. The last one was Galapagos. This is in Madagascar, and this is a remote beach in Indonesian Borneo. So really out of the way places. And the three that we want to talk about a little bit more today are Antarctica, the Arctic, and the Galapagos. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Just a reminder of everything that's inclusive. So when you see our cruise fares, it includes the international economy class airfare to get you to the destination, to get you to the ship. All of your beverages. Tell us how you want your bar stocked. Tell us how you want your bar fridge stocked, and we'll stock it and keep replenishing it throughout. Complimentary Wi-Fi in every suite category, not just the upper tier. And unlimited Wi-Fi, onboard gratuities, all taken care of. Butler service in every single suite category, not just the upper tier. And then on expedition, everything that we're going to talk about, going ashore by Zodiac, using the sea kayaks, going snorkeling, all of these activities, they're all included when we're talking about expedition. The expedition team, this is a group of people who are professionals in their field, ornithologists, glaciologists, marine biologists, historians who are bringing it to life when we're there. They're interpreting for us. And then in the polar regions, you'll notice in some of these images, a lot of people wearing their red parkas. We provide a complimentary red parka, and it's yours to keep, so that you don't have to go and find one and buy one and carry it all the way down to Antarctica with you and worry about bringing it back. It's sitting there on the ship waiting for you when you get there. So speaking of Antarctica, another quick video.
The White Continent. This really feels like Earth's last frontier. It's so wild and remote here, but you instantly feel at peace. Everything is so vast, so pure, quiet. It's awe-inspiring. The ice, the whales, the ocean. This is a sanctuary we all have to treasure and preserve.
So I feel really privileged that I get to speak about Antarctica, and I've been really fortunate in that I've been 4 times, and marketing gives us these incredible tools to use, these beautiful images and videos, and I never feel like I do this place any justice when I describe it. It really is unlike anything you've ever seen. You know, very often you'll travel somewhere and you'll say, well, it's like such and such, but without the crowds, or it's this and this, but with fewer trees, or it's not as busy as such and such. There's nothing like that with Antarctica. You can't use another destination to describe it and then make these exceptions or these additions. It really is unique. You know, for many people, it'll be their 7th continent, stepping foot on their 7th continent if you're real explorers. And it's fantastic for nature lovers, wildlife lovers, photographers, bucket listers. Again, if you just want to say that you've been on the 7th continent. One question that we get asked very, very often is, how fit do I have to be to do one of these expeditions? And really, you can see it's a very, very flat landing here. If you can climb a couple flights of stairs, if you can play around a golf, if you can walk around the mall a little while, you can do this, because there are a lot of expedition team members to help you in and out of the Zodiacs. And again, you can see it's quite flat terrain here when we're at this landing. And if this is as much as you want to do, and you then want to go off and find the nearest penguin colony and hang out with them and just immerse yourself and take photographs, then that's all you need to do. There's nothing that's a forced march here. No one's going to make you climb a mountain if that's not what you want to do. Alternatively, if you do want to climb a mountain, if you're concerned that there's not enough activity on something like this, grab a set of trekking poles and find a couple of expedition team members that are looking for something to do. We have on the Silver Cloud, for example, 28 expedition team members for 240 guests, so better than 1-to-10 ratio, to really help you go and explore and do something. So if that's your idea of fun, go ahead, John.
And do really what you want to do. I didn't do Antarctica, but I went to the Arctic, and that picture reminded me of getting off in the Arctic, and you could either do a beach stroll or you could climb on top of the glacier. Well, I looked at the top of that, and all I said, I'm going to go all the way up there just to look back down here. I said, I don't think so. So I did the walk, and probably about 40% of the ship did the walk, and the walk was really very fascinating because they pointed out a lot of things. So don't feel that you have to do the most strenuous thing to see the most. As a matter of fact, a lot of people that did do the hike, do up the glacier, said they wish they had done the beach stroll instead, because it really was very interesting.
And every time you go out, there's something new to see. It's kind of like going on safari. Unless you go out, you're not going to see that leopard kill. So you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning and get in the Jeep and go on safari. Similar to this, depending on what you want to see, and if penguins are your thing, then as John said, you do some of the beach strolls and spend a little bit more time closer to the penguins. There are limits about how many guests we can have on shore at a time. So, and we want to limit it. We don't want to crowd the wildlife, and we don't want it to seem like we're hurting people around. So we take a limited number of people ashore. And while that's happening, we take another limited group of guests in our Zodiacs, and we cruise around doing what we call Zodiac cruising. You can see there's a leopard seal just underneath the water here about to show itself to these lucky guests. They're the red parkas that we're talking about, by the way. You get closer to some of the wildlife, of course, the penguins, the seals and the whales, things that you wouldn't see on land. But even penguins, when you see them on land, they're very ungainly and very sort of awkward. When you see them in the water, they're very graceful, absolutely beautiful, beautiful animals to watch. So you see them from a different vantage point. And as I said, seals and whales. So being in the Zodiac is not sacrificing anything. Some people prefer the Zodiac cruising to the landings. I like them both. And so in the morning, we'll probably get started around 8 o'clock. One group ashore, one group in the Zodiacs. And after about 2 hours, so now it's 10 a.m., we'll switch places. Those in the Zodiacs get their turn ashore, and those ashore get their turn in the Zodiacs. And another 2 hours or so elapses, we'll go back to the ship. We'll have lunch. The ship might navigate to the other side of a little island or to another bay or inlet or something where there's a different species of penguin. And then we'll just repeat it all in the afternoon. So we say that we do 2 excursions in a day. In my opinion, it's 4 excursions a day, because it's a landing and a Zodiac cruise in the morning, and another landing and another Zodiac cruise in the afternoon. If you want to, and again, if you're feeling rigorous and want to do something a little more strenuous, then the evening before, you can sign up, put your name down on a sign-up sheet to do the sea kayaking. Again, all included. You would have to give up one of those 4 excursions that I mentioned earlier to do this. And this is, again, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. You're going out as a group of 16 guests in 8 tandem kayaks. And there are always 2 kayak guides. Right at the right-hand side of the image, you can see the tip of a red kayak sticking out. And here you can see the 2 red kayaks. Those are single kayaks, and those are the kayak guides. So you always go with kayak guides. You never go unaccompanied. They're just there to make sure you're not getting too close to certain things and not straying too far apart. There's also a Zodiac nearby. People will ask this question as well. You're away from the ship, so you're away from the hustle and bustle and the noise of the ship. But if you got cold or tired, or you just weren't feeling well, you would just raise your hand. The Zodiac would come and pick you up and tow you back to the ship, and you could get warm up pretty quickly on the ship. So a beautiful experience, a beautiful way to experience it as well, because now you're just 2 or 3 feet off the water. So the perspective is really something, and the sights and the sounds and the smells take on a whole new meaning when you're in the kayaks. So moving on to the Arctic and another video.
While sailing on Silversea's first ever crossing of the Northeast Passage, I was struck by the incredible stillness of the Arctic Circle. We drifted calmly through pack ice as sunshine pierced the crisp Arctic air. From the top deck, we spotted 2 young polar bears in the distance. Time stood still, leaving me mesmerized as I witnessed these majestic animals exploring the frozen world of brilliant white ice and beautiful blue water. The polar bears captivated me entirely in their world of solitude, peacefulness, and freedom.
So the Arctic, very, very different from Antarctica in a couple of very significant ways. The first one is obviously they're at polar opposites, literally the other end of the world. But where Antarctica is a continent, there is a landmass there that's covered in ice. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Arctic is a frozen ocean surrounded by continents. There is no landmass at the North Pole. It's just ice. It's a moving ice sheet. So the other thing is Antarctica, we typically access from Argentina. 99% of the time we access Antarctica from Argentina. It's the closest point of land to where we are going in Antarctica, and it means that we can be there in a day and a half of sailing. In the Arctic, we can access it and do access it from Alaska, from Canada, from Greenland, from Iceland, from Norway, and from Russia. And it's different every part of the Arctic that we visit, and we go there at different times of year because of ice conditions and different things to see and what we're looking for. The other very significant way that they differ is that going to the Arctic, if you think back to that video a minute ago in the polar bears, we had no idea where those bears were going to be. We had no idea there were going to be bears. We hope we're going to see bears when we go to the Arctic, but it's very much like going on safari. We use these small ships with their very high ice class to go into areas like this, because it's not any old cruise ship that you can do this with. Your insurance company would cancel your insurance very, very quickly if you didn't have a ship with an ice class. So you need that, and you need the right gear, and you need the right team who know what they're looking for to go into the Arctic. So anything that we're hoping to find in the Arctic, beluga, narwhal, walrus, polar bear, reindeer, Arctic fox, it's a matter of coming across them. We have ideas of where we may see them, the sort of terrain or the sort of landscape that they are in, the sort of water habitat that they may be in. But all of those species that I just mentioned move around a fair bit. The contrast to Antarctica is that in Antarctica, those bird colonies, those penguin colonies, they form every single year in the spring. They disband in the fall, they come back in the spring, and we know where to find them. So it's really easy. In the Arctic, you have to go with a great sense of adventure, because we just never know what we're going to find or where we're going to find it. So if we see walrus at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we're having lunch, the expedition leader may get on the radio or get over the PA and just say, ladies and gentlemen, there are walrus off the starboard bow, and we're putting the kayaks, or we're putting the Zodiacs in the water. We're going to see how close we can get to these guys and show them to you. So finish up. Those who want to join us, hurry up on your lunch and let's go. This happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. And there was a very short discussion with the expedition staff, or among the expedition staff, about whether or not to wake the guests up. And of course, we had to, because no one wants to hear about how wonderful the Northern Lights were at breakfast at 7 o'clock the next morning. They'd rather be woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning and told, hey, there are Northern Lights. If you'd like to join us, put your big red parkas on over your pajamas and put your boots on and come up to the top deck and come and see this with us. Similarly with polar bears, if this happens at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're going to get a wake-up call. Those who would like, we've just spotted bears. We've spotted a mother and 2 cubs. Those who would like to see, we're going to get the Zodiacs into the water right now and see what we can do. And we'll have breakfast waiting when we come back to the ship. And they'll call the captain, or they'll call down to the kitchen as well and just say, hold off, because we've spotted bears. So again, great sense of adventure. Moving on to the Galapagos in another video.
So we're going to let Amanda take the whole thing.
Yeah, you're right. Amanda, you're presenting now. You're taking over.
No, I don't think I can present. If you want to play your video, I'll be happy to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, I'll play the video, and then I have a question for you after the video.
Sure.
Galapagos is unique because this is one of the few places on Earth where you're actually accepted as part of the environment. These species are not running away or flying away. In certain cases, they're coming up to you. And that makes this place truly unique. Something that surprises many people is the diversity of Galapagos. Not only the terrain, which is distinct from one island to the next, but also the diversity of life. We have a unique diversity. In areas where you have reptiles such as sea turtles swimming next to penguins, there's nowhere else on Earth that you have that combination. Being a naturalist on the Silver Galapagos is not only fascinating for me because of this environment that we're traveling through, but also meeting our guests that are coming in here and seeing Galapagos through their eyes and the excitement of being able to interact with the species here. It's very personal. There's no other place like Galapagos on Earth.
So Amanda, when were you there?
I was there last year. I went with my dad.
Cool.
I think it was
The thing that I say about that video, and I'll just ask you, would you say that anything in that video in terms of the wildlife or whatever you saw was staged?
No, definitely not staged.
That's the amazing part about it is, you know, we hear about it since we're kids and we see these images and that sort of thing, but it's not until you actually are there and you're walking around on those trails and those paths and those boardwalks, or you're snorkeling, that you realize this is how close I can get to the wildlife. This isn't exaggerated. It's really like this. The wildlife know no fear of us. They have grown up around humans or with humans there that aren't hunting them and pose no threat to them. So they just walk among us, or they allow us to walk among them. And you do get that close, again, whether in the water or on the land. So it's really like an open air zoo experience or an open air living history museum. It's pretty incredible. We have two different itineraries, the Western itinerary and the North and Central. And I don't want to get into the weeds about the differences between the two of them. I think what it's more important to consider is this chart and this weather, because depending on where and when you want to go, or what we find, and I don't know, Amanda, if you would agree with this, but most people will come and say, hey, we have a window of time in October, and there's a 3-week window when we can go to the Galapagos. Is it a good time of year to go? And the reality is there's no bad time of year to go. The Galapagos are only 2 degrees from the equator. So you can see here the temperatures. The average air temperature in August and September drops down to 70. But in March and April, it's up to 83, but that's only a 13-degree difference in the average air temperature. There aren't very many places in North America that have a 13-degree difference. I don't know if there are any. And then in the water, the average water temperature varies from 70 to 77. So there's only a 7-degree difference. Of course, there is a warmer, wetter time of year. There's it's more of a humid time of year, and it presents itself as precipitation in the form of this mist almost that falls at night or late afternoon in the evening. The islands are a little greener as a result, and obviously the water temperatures and the air temperatures are a little bit warmer. The cooler, drier season, if the humidity doesn't appeal to you or that idea, then look at the June to December period. You're getting more hours of daylight, more hours of sunshine. Not more hours of daylight. Again, you're so close to the equator that the number of hours of daylight doesn't really change from one time of the year to the other. But it is a little bit cooler time of year. The other thing we have charts for, if you really want to get into it, and when you're doing your research, let Amanda know and I can help, is charts that will look at what's happening with the wildlife at each time of year. So if your choice is between October and March, then we can really dig in and look at what's happening with the wildlife in March, what's happening with the wildlife in October. And if it's more about birds and you're a birder in March, then maybe that's where we need to focus on a little bit more. So that's what I would say about choosing when to go. Something that I love about the Galapagos is that as a result of some Ecuadorian laws and the laws of the Galapagos National Park Service, is all of our guides have to be permanent residents of the Galapagos. So anywhere else that we operate, Antarctica, the Arctic, and this is classic side, expedition side, it doesn't matter, anywhere in the world outside of the Galapagos, the captain, the dishwasher, and all the expedition team could come from anywhere in the world. And I think we have 54 countries represented throughout our fleet. In Ecuador, in the Galapagos, they all have to be from Ecuador, from the captain to the dishwasher. And the expedition team all have to be permanent residents of the Galapagos. And who better to show you the islands than people who live there? Really. Typically, they go to the mainland and get an undergraduate or graduate degree, and then they come back. They take a 5-month training program, mandatory from the Galapagos National Park Service. And then depending on their background, if they've got a hospitality background, or depending on the degree they just got over on the mainland, then they'll get hired as guides by the different companies. And these are the guys, men and women, who bring it to life as we go ashore. You can see how close the ship is here. It's not a long Zodiac ride. That shallow draft that I mentioned early on is what really plays a key role here, because it's not a 15 or 20 minute Zodiac ride from the ship to get ashore. It's typically 4 or 5 minutes and we're there. You can see it's a very, very casual trip. It's very temperate. Everyone is in their shorts and sandals and t-shirts most of the time. And then it's the guides who interpret for us. They're the ones who take us in small groups, 8 to 10 guests at a time, and do the trails and do the walks. They'll come snorkeling with us and interpret and talk about the nest that we came across, or the eggshell that we came across, or the feather, or the half-eaten lizard, or the half-eaten cactus fruit, or whatever it might be. They're the ones who are explaining it all to us and answering all of our questions. We explore in a number of different, go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing that I think is so important in knowing, you know, where all of your guides, where all the staff and crew are coming from, where all of the food is coming from, is the level of pride. I think that that is one of the best things about the experience, the level of pride that my main guide, Juan Carlos, had for his home, his destination, and his wildlife that he's showing us, that he's bringing us to, is absolutely over the top, undeniable, and it makes for the experience because they speak with such passion. So it's not just, I'm bringing you to see these eggs hatch. I'm bringing you to see these eggs hatch because this couple of birds I saw doing their mating call last year or several months ago, and I watched this. I know what's happening, and this is what happens over week, year over year, month over month. And to me, it's the pride and the passion for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And, you know, you would think they would get tired of it, but because of the subtle changes from month to month, our expedition team work 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. And, you know, they come back after having been home for 4 weeks. And this is funny too. We were disembarking on a Saturday, and it was a very short ride from the pier to the airport. And one of the guides was saying goodbye. And I said, "Are you not coming with us?" No, I'm going home. And I said, "Exactly. Are you not flying back to the mainland with us?" I just assumed he had a young family and young kids that he was flying back to. And he said, "No." And he sort of pointed towards the village and he said, "You see the house with the red roof?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "The one behind that, that's my house." That's where they live, really. And you know, his 4 weeks off, he was just going to probably hang around the village and maybe do some stuff at home and whatever, and then get back on the ship and see the subtle changes that had happened in the islands in the month that he had been away. So I love that. That's a great point, Amanda. Thank you. We explore a number of different ways, of course, you know, on foot when we're walking around, but the sea kayaking that I mentioned in Antarctica, in the Arctic, and here as well, complimentary. Just let us know the evening before. They'll always advise you on any expedition. Every evening, there's what is called the recap and the briefing. The recap is discussing, where did we go today, and what did we do, and what did we see, and what are the names of the animals we saw, because even people who don't think they're going to become birders, some of them become birders, and they want to know the Latin name, and they want to know the Spanish name, and they want to know the English name of all the birds that they've seen, and then check them off of their list. So again, 8 tandem kayaks, 16 guests at a time with 2 kayak guides. We explore when we're snorkeling. So all of the snorkeling gear is provided: the mask, the fins, the snorkel, the wetsuit. And something that's going to change when we start sailing again, which we hope is as early as February of next year in the Galapagos, is where all of the snorkel gear was disinfected between groups. Now, when you walk into your suite, and there's a backpack waiting for you, there's a brand new stainless steel water bottle waiting for you, there will also be a mask and a snorkel, brand new in the bag, yours to keep, because we just don't want to take any chances, certainly not in the early stages when we get back to sailing again. So everyone has a mask and snorkel that's theirs to keep. The Galapagos is an amazing destination for kids. This is my son, Alex, and we took him there in July of 2018. So we're coming up on 2.5 years ago. He was 5 at the time, which is the minimum age for expedition. He still talks about this trip, and he still insists that we're going back. Because as far as he's concerned, remember I told you there were 2 itineraries? He thinks we've only seen half of the Galapagos. We missed a whole lot because we didn't do the other itinerary. So he's holding my feet to the fire about going back to the Galapagos. It helps that there's a brand new ship as well. In the middle of COVID, in the middle of all of this drama, we had a brand new ship delivered in July from a shipyard in the Netherlands. She was designed and built with the Galapagos in mind. She will only ever sail in the Galapagos. And a lot of the innovative ideas that went into this are because this ship will sail in the Galapagos. She is very, very fuel efficient. So we're trying to minimize how much fuel we consume. She has a wonderful water treatment system because we're trying to cut down on how much dirty water we're putting, but also how much desalination we have to do. Of course, there's plenty of fresh water, but we want to do it in a way that's fuel efficient as well. She has thrusters so that they can keep the ship in position without having to drop the anchor. So we don't have to worry about busting up the coral or the seabed. So a lot of great ideas went into the ship. You walk on the ship and the very first thing you see is this base camp area. This is an area when you're not out exploring the Galapagos, you can still explore when you're on the ship. We have a partnership with the Royal Geographical Society. Darwin was a member and we are members. And through this partnership, a number of artifacts are on loan, including replicas of some of Darwin's sketches and notebooks and things like that. So you're wandering around the ship through this sort of mini museum experiencing all of this. This is in the Explorer Lounge. Every evening, this is where when I mentioned the recap and the briefing, that's where this will happen. And every afternoon after lunch at 1 o'clock, there's a formal lecture. So of the 10 expedition team members, I mentioned that they typically go to the mainland and get a degree. One of them will speak on the Sunday at 1 o'clock, on the Monday at 1 o'clock, et cetera. And one afternoon, the lecture might be about the geology of the islands. And the following afternoon, the lecture might be about the cacti or the flora of the islands. So it's very, very in-depth. It's very much a voyage. And all of these expedition voyages are very much about the enrichment aspect and what you're learning. This is the smallest suite on the ship. This is what we say is the worst. This is
as bad as it gets.
That's as bad as it gets. Thank you, John. I knew I was fumbling for the right words there. Where your balcony is sort of incorporated into the ship. So if you feel, or into your suite, you feel you want a little bit more space, you close this window, open up the drapes, and you've got this space incorporated right into the ship. You want to feel like you're on a balcony, or open this window, have it come all the way down, draw this curtain across, and it's a heavy, heavy curtain. And then you feel like you're sitting on a balcony separate from your suite. But that's as bad as it gets. This is getting towards the other end. This is, I think, the Grand or the Royal with that semicircular balcony around the suite. And this is aft, I think, on deck 5. So brand new ship. No one sailed on her yet. She's sitting off the coast of Ecuador, just waiting for us to be able to sail again. While you're thinking and dreaming and planning your next trips, before you call Amanda and say, hey, this is where we want to go, this is what we want to do. A couple of things. We have a great blog called discover.silversea.com, and there are just some wonderful articles in here. It's not a sales pitch. It's not a, act now, save $200. There's nothing like that. These are great articles written by professional writers that we've sent to go and experience some of these trips, and accompanied with great photographs. And it's just a write-up. And it's not just expedition, it's classic destinations as well. Similarly, on YouTube, we have a channel, the Silversea Cruises channel on YouTube. The videos that I showed here, I think there were 4 of them, and many, many more. There are scores and scores and scores of them on this channel. Beautiful, beautiful videos to help inspire you and get you thinking about traveling again before you give Amanda a call and say, hey, this is where we want to go. John, do you want to talk about some of the booking
we do have some great offers for you as well. A $1,000 reduced deposit. So again, you can book anything for 21 or 22 except for the World Cruise or Grand Voyages with only $1,000 deposit per seat. And when you do make your final payment, we'll actually add $1,000 shipboard credit to your booking. So again, the $1,000 can be used to buy any kind of bauble you like, or for shore excursions or spa treatments, whatever you like to use. Because again, all the liquor, gratuities is included, as well as Wi-Fi. If you do book and pay in full by December 14th, you would get a 10% savings, which is actually, you think about it in the bank, if you look at CD rates or whatever, it's, if you're lucky, you're going to get 2% if you're really lucky. So it's a great deal. You pay in full by December 14th, you will receive a 10% savings. And we do have our Cruise with Confidence. So you can cancel up until 30 days prior to departure and get a full future cruise credit for any sailings until December 31st of 21. Just to let you know, we didn't mention it, but we are part of the Royal Caribbean family of brands. So we have a great backing with them. By the way, their stock went through the roof in the last few days. I don't know if anybody, so the stock market is definitely paying attention to us. It's a great, great offer. So, again, we have great backing behind us. And with
that's
that,
everything we have. Thank you. But
yeah,
I think
and
we'll
if we
open it
have
to
any questions,
yeah,
feel free to ask now.
I would definitely like to share a little bit more in terms of Galapagos, Arctic, Antarctica. For me, when I'm looking at trips and I'm talking to clients about this, I want to know what wildlife you're interested in seeing, what type of experience you want. And the one thing that each of the experiences does bring you is truly to the destination that you can experience it by stepping foot on land. A lot of people think, oh, it's a small ship, so I must like the small ship. But the important thing is those small ships are the only ones with the most access to the destination. So you might go on a ship with 3,000 passengers and they say they're cruising Antarctica, but they will not ever step foot on the 7th continent. So I think it's extremely important to know the difference between the cruise line that you're sailing on and the reason why you would pick a small ship. And that's definitely something that myself and my team of advisors at Roseborough Travel will be happy to sit down with each individual of you and kind of talk about what kind of experience you want out of it.
Smaller really does get you much closer to the destination. And that goes through our classic fleet as well. Like when we say we're going to London, we actually go to London. We dock in front of the Tower Bridge. But throughout, especially when it comes to expedition, it's the only way to get to these places. You're not going to be, I went on an Arctic cruise and for 10 days, we didn't see another living soul for 10 days. And there's no Hilton at the quote unquote the ports of call, because there's no ports of call. You land actually directly onto the beach, and your feet might get a little wet. You're in boots depending upon what type of itinerary you are, but it's a true adventure that you cannot, until you've done it, you cannot really fathom it. I'm not really exaggerating here. When I went, one of the things we saw, we went ashore one day and there was two groups of us and there was a little snow still left. This was in the Arctic. And there was 10 people on one side and 10 people on the other side. And we're probably, I want to say, 50 yards apart from each other. And a lone reindeer came up between the two groups and just looked around for like 2 minutes and then ran away. But it was one of those times that everyone just stopped and didn't say a word, because it was sort of a magical little experience that you just don't expect. And that's what expedition travel does.
Truly.
I agree.
I'm trying to unmute, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or type them in the chat box. We'll wait a couple more minutes and see if we've got any questions. And if not, or if you don't think of anything or you're too shy to ask now, then feel free to get in touch with Roseborough and ask your questions. If you've got a group or a family group and you want to dig in a little bit more and have some questions that you'd really like to dive into, then speak to Amanda and she'll let John or I know, and we can put a private presentation together just for you, or a private Zoom call where we'll review your questions.
Yeah, Carl, I was really impressed at how many families were on. I know you brought your son. How many families were on board our Galapagos cruise? It was essentially a bunch of groups on board, and they were all large family groups.
Mm-hmm.
It was really impressive and so exciting to me to see grandparents with their adult children and then their grandchildren on board. And such a multi-generational experience to see these people bringing their great-granddaughter or their granddaughter to take photos of the blue-footed boobies. You know,
Yeah.
it just was.
It's a great thing.
Absolutely.
One of the really cool things we saw too was, we talk about multi-generational travel in the industry a fair bit, but have you heard of gramping, where the grandparents take the grandkids?
Yes.
So we had a couple from the UK, and it was their 3 granddaughters, each from a different set of parents. And the granddaughters probably ranged in age from 12 to 14. So these 3 girl cousins were all hanging around together. And I went and spoke to the parents and introduced myself, or grandparents, and introduced myself. And they said, listen, we just didn't want to give them another Fitbit or iPad or video game or something like that. We wanted them to have this experience. A little bit self-serving. We get to spend 10 days with our granddaughters. But 60 years from now, when they think back, what an amazing experience their grandparents afforded them this opportunity. We have a question.
And by the way, the youngest age is 5 years old for expedition. That was the question that came up. So again, one thing I do also want to bring up with the Galapagos especially, it's a very easy destination to get to. It's extremely exotic, but Miami to Quito, where you spend 2 nights at the JW Marriott, it's only a 3.5-hour flight. And that's included, air is included from most of you, I believe, would be in the Central Florida area. So for you, air would be included from Orlando, but it would be Orlando, Miami, Miami to Quito, 2 nights in Quito, over into Baltra, and then on the reverse as well. But again, it's all inclusive. And again, 3.5 hours from Miami to Quito. You're not on a plane forever. So
it's a great experience. And the JW Marriott that we stayed at was amazing, as well as being able to go walk on the equator and the touring that we were able to go and do while we were there. It was definitely a worthwhile experience. I loved having those 2 nights ahead of time.
Yep. All right. I don't see anything. That John got to that one question that was in the chat box. So I think we've, unless anyone wants to unmute themselves.
Well, if anybody has questions that they don't feel like asking on the webinar, I'm definitely here to answer questions with you. We partner directly with Silversea, so I can, if I don't know the answer to it, I can certainly get John or Carl on a call with you and be able to, you know, kind of address any concerns or questions that I may not be able to answer. I was telling them earlier, I brought my Silversea backpack and my my Tiva shoes and everything to be prepared in case you had questions about what to pack. I think that's the #1 question I get after passengers start planning a trip like this. Okay, what kind of dress code do I have? What do I have to pack? And our team here at Roseborough Travel is always happy to help with that.
And we've recorded this, and I will send the link of the recording to Amanda, and then she'll share with everyone who registered. So if you want to watch again, if you came in a little bit late, if you want to share it with somebody, by all means, feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone.
well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Carl and John, for doing the great presentation.
Thank you for
Pleasure.
having us. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.